I mean, high tea has its place.
We're conservatory ladies, right?
Yes.
From Sheboygan.
Oh, yeah.
Sheboygan.
We spent 3 years at the conservatory in Boygan, and we have our high tea.
Yeah, if high tea were more like speakeasy, showgirl time.
Oh, that funeral, yes.
Yeah.
The pallbearers. That was great.
I missed a funeral.
Well, I guess we should get into that because we're already starting to talk about the movie. Welcome to You're No Fun Anymore.
Ding, ding, ding.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yes, the podcast where we deal with our impending nostalgia. I'm Randall.
I'm Dana.
I'm Bryce.
I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Helen.
And we are going to be talking about Some Like It Hot, or To Will Hayes, Thanks for Everything, Billy Wilder.
Very nice.
Very good. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Or Sister Act .0.
Yeah.
Pre-Sister Act.
Point.
Sister Act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Sister Act, the prequel,
Yep.
episode 1.
Not since Scarface, so much action. Not since the Marx Brothers, so much comedy. Not since the 7-Year Itch, so much Marilyn. The best picture this year will also be the funniest.
Want to talk? It's about the Florida job.
The Florida job? Get out of here.
What kind of a band is it anyway?
You gotta be under 25.
We could pass for that.
You gotta be blonde.
We could dye our hair.
And you gotta be girls.
We could. No, we couldn't.
I'm Sugar Cane. I play the ukulele and I sing, too.
We have been playing with the wrong band. Boy, would I love to borrow a cup of that sugar.
There's one thing sure, boy never met girl like this before. You've never laughed more at sex or a picture about it.
You stay here as long as you like.
Jack may have beaten Tony to the sugar, but not for long.
You must be quite a girl.
Want to bet? Ahoy there.
Ahoy!
I know why you want to stay here. You're after sugar.
Champagne.
If I were a girl, and I am, I'd watch my step.
Hear Marilyn sing the fabulous songs of the Roaring '20s.
Running wild, lost control, running wild, mighty bold, feeling gay, reckless too, carefree mind all the time, never blue.
Have I got things to tell you? What happened? I'm engaged. Congratulations. Who's the lucky girl? I am.
Nobody, it's not worthwhile.
But you don't understand, Osgood. I'm a man. Well, nobody's perfect.
Running wild.
Content warning. This selected film may contain scenes depicting the following: murder, mass shootings and gun violence, sexual coercion, homophobic and ableist humor, physical violence, misogyny, alcoholism, unrelenting innuendo, maximum sleeper bunk occupancy violations, numerous Italian stereotypes, regional accent dysphoria, and smoking. And now, back to your regularly scheduled podcast.
I believe, have we all seen this or no?
Before?
Previously?
I had
No.
seen it a really long time ago.
I had
so
never seen it.
I remembered the general gist of it and the train stuff, but I didn't
Mhm.
remember a lot of it.
I haven't seen a lot of movies. I'm more of a
Like
TV
just in
person.
general?
Yeah.
I mean,
I've seen them more often now.
She hasn't seen
I
them?
have never seen the Spider-Mans.
Like any of them?
Spider-Mans.
The Spider-Mans. I'm not very familiar with the Spider-Mans. I've never seen Avatar. A lot of the movies that
I've
were,
not
like,
seen Avatar
really-
either because I don't want
Lost.
to.
All the movies that were like really big when I was in college, and so I didn't go to movies.
That's basically all I did in college.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I watch this movie at least 2 times a year from the ages of 7 to about 16.
Whoa, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm there
I do
with
remember
you.
Because
this.
your parents loved it or because you loved it?
Well, my parents introduced it to me because they loved it, but then eventually I loved it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm in Dana's boat with this. Like, one of the things I said to Randall before we started watching is like, I love this movie as a kid. And it, on one level, it is such a kid-friendly movie. You
Yeah.
have, like 2 guys being funny and you have music and everything goes flying over your head as a kid.
Yep.
Yeah.
But as an adult, it's a little.
I mean,
You're like, oh.
there's a
wow.
lot of stuff here.
Yeah.
There is, but I think before we start this conversation, let's just blanket statement. It was the 50s, guys.
It was
Yeah.
the 50s.
Well,
it was the
let's-
50s.
It was
Let's-
the 50s being the 20s.
And you
Yeah.
can't really see it any other way. Like there's
Yeah.
no point where, I mean, it's so of its time and it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like,
I mean, I'm just going to go into like giving us a little background of like
Yeah.
where we are in history, but like
oh yeah, paint us a picture.
Yeah,
This
paint us
was-
a picture.
Picture it.
honestly, this was already a nostalgic piece
Yeah.
in 59.
Yep.
So the year is 1959. The tide is starting to ebb on America's authoritarian anti-left crusade. Of course, not socially. Like the House Un-Americans Activities Committee has been in decline since the mid-50s. The public downfall and censure of McCarthy, who was never on the HUAC, but he was very heavily associated with it. So much so that former President Truman came out on this time and said, this is the most un-American thing in the country today. Television is king in America right now. By 1959, over 85% of households have a television. Now, compare that to 9 years earlier, where you had less than 10%.
Wow.
Yeah, there hasn't been an adaptation of technology that fast ever. Like, I'm just looking at the numbers
Cell
between...
phones?
No, even smartphones, when they were adopted, when they were first introduced onto the market, you saw a share of people who were already invested in cell phones. That came in at about like 30%, and we're now at about 80 some odd percent.
Oh, wow.
And that's over the same kind of time period, a little bit around a decade. It's crazy. And it all comes to the fact that televisions used to be super expensive. You're talking about like a household would pay several weeks worth of their salary to get one in the early 50s. As opposed to by the end, it was much more affordable. So the audience for this is growing, which means a lot of programming is changing. This is also the death nail on what they call the golden age of television. 59 is basically the split. 59 is actually split on a lot of things, as we'll see. Pope John the 23rd announces his intent to call a second ecumenical, is I saying that word right?
Ecumenical, I think.
Ecumenical General Council, which would result in changes more widely known as Vatican II.
Electric.
Yeah.
That was good.
In music, Lloyd Prince is on top with Frankie Avalon, along with the Platters. And of course, the one thing that led us into the year, the number one song on the charts, was by the Chipmunks.
Aw.
Yeah.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, that gives you an idea of how weird this music scene is. Elvis is in the army, so, you know, there's that thing. Berry Gordy had just started Motown Records. And of course, the day the music died, Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, Big Bopper, along with their pilot, fatally crashed in Iowa. The 20 top mafia members are found guilty of conspiring to obstruct justice at the beginning of the year following their involvement and subsequent arrests at the raid of the famous Appalachian Summit, a national Cosa Nostra meeting of over 100 mafiosos from Italy, Cuba, and all across America that took place in upstate New York. Also, along with this, after targeted harassment, as it was back then, and attempted arrests by police, a handful of drag queens and sex workers at the Cooper's Donut in Los Angeles, which was a queer and trans-friendly cafe in downtown, began to throw their coffees and donuts and random trash at the cops until they fled without making the arrest.
Wow.
This has often been written up as the first of the modern gay uprisings to take place 10 years prior to Stonewall, but a lot of it is, there was a lot of this stuff kind of popping off because at that time it was actually illegal to have on your ID and dress in another gender.
Wow.
Homosexuality was blatantly illegal in all sorts of places, like the UK, where Liberace successfully sues the English paper The Daily Mirror for libel, awarding him £8,000, which is now worth about £154 million, or about $211 million, over a published article insinuating he was a homosexual.
How dare they?
Yeah. Jazz greats Miles Davis and John Coltrane both begin their initial recording sessions for the quintessential albums Kinda Blue and Giant Steps, respectively, both in the month of March. That's a weird way to put that. Also in March, Ruth Handler's iconic Barbie doll makes its debut at the New York Toy Fair in 1959. After years of trying to convince her husband and co-founder of Mattel that this was a surefire hit. By the end of this year, it would sell over 300,000.
Gee, they were toy fairs?
Yeah, New York Toy Fair.
They're still,
It's just kind of like a trade show. I mean, it's kind of like at San Diego Comic-Con. Now it's just promotion. Handler had wanted a modern sensibility reflected in the doll she had made. So its original model was actually based on the vitals from then famous Hollywood stars such as Liz Taylor and Marilyn Monroe. And speaking of reducing gifted actresses to hollow plastic shells of themselves. Yeah, here we go with Some Like It Hot. It opened the week before Easter weekend, so the late March of 1959. premiering only in 6 cities because this was produced without a certification of approval from the Production Code Administration in defiance of the Hays Code, which had already been kind of losing credibility in the fact that people didn't really want to have to go through these kind of weird censorship nonsense. But despite these limitations, it was the 3rd highest grossing film just in 6 cities, behind Rio Bravo and Sleeping Beauty that week. Based on that, they got a huge, a wider release the following weekend, Easter weekend. And its promising start ends up staying at number 1 for 3 weeks. It gets removed by another new release, but then takes over the number 1 spot a month later and holds it for another 4 weeks. So it was in theaters for a long, long time. People loved this. By 1962, it had made $14 million, or about $120 million nowadays. And it was also one of the first of the 25 films to be inducted in the National Film Registry. Yeah, so it has a much storied legacy. Which
also, I looked this up yesterday. Number 22 on the AFI list of the best movies ever made, and the number 1 comedy that AFI has ever listed.
And Billy Wilder would contest that. He's always said that he never thought it was the funniest movie he made. He just said it was good.
It's fair.
Yeah, but let's get into what we thought about Some Like It Hot.
Helen's opinion is the one we should start with.
Yeah, you seem like you weren't digging it.
I just was a little bored, to be honest, guys. It's really slow.
Fair enough.
I thought it was okay. I'm not Helen, I'm Alex. I know we sound alike sometimes, but when I was watching it, I remember when I was younger, people would be like, oh, Marilyn Monroe wasn't a really good actress. She was just more of a face, blah, blah, blah. And I was looking at this and I was like, she's actually a decent actress.
Pretty good in this one.
She's pretty good. And maybe she wasn't that, people didn't think of her as a good actress because they never actually gave her meatier roles. They gave her like these like fluffy roles. And she could have probably lived up to a better actress
she did
position.
pretty well.
She did pretty well,
Considering she was literally like
half naked half the time. Like,
oh my God, those dresses were.
Those 2 dresses.
Hold on with a hope and a prayer. I mean, just a hope and a prayer.
I think she'd either just had a miscarriage right before that or something.
There's a lot that has been written about, Marilyn Monroe, but yeah, she had recovered from a miscarriage. This is in the time period where she was married to
Miller, right?
Arthur Miller.
Miller.
And he actually encouraged her to kind of go for this role, even though she saw the part as basically that. It was like, I didn't want to play a dumb blonde.
Yeah.
Also, it wasn't in color, and there's a lot of these other kind of factors, but by her accounts, she enjoyed her time on set. This is also when she was like trying to do more method and working with Lee Strasberg and trying to really break out and do something different with this. And I think you see it a lot coming out, but
I think you can see it if we're going to start talking about Marilyn. You can see the performance and what she's drawing from her personal life every time she sings.
Yeah, totally. The songs, I was like, they were really moving.
I know, very moving.
And especially the last one she does. Like you can see they were heartbreaking, and that was very clearly method.
Yeah.
And I have to say, like, the movie definitely picked up when she finally gets introduced, Yeah. Before that,
Alex was like, look, a real woman is on screen.
We can back up and talk about that mob boss opening, which still boggles my mind as to how disconnected it feels from everything that comes after
so
it.
weird.
Also, I love it.
I love it. It's also so weirdly stilted.
Kind of stereotypically offensive to Italians again, where the accent and Mr. Mozzarella. Yeah. I actually said that 3 times. Mr. Mozzarella?
Yep. Mr. Mozzarella.
Yeah, Mr. Mozzarella. I mean, well, Wilder had done. I mean, a lot of people credit him with, the noir being what it is because of his work on Double Indemnity. Ooh. And honestly, like one of my favorite things about this film is that opening of just making it just blatantly a noir film. Like the way it's shot, the way it looks, it feels like a film from 20 years ago.
But that's the problem. It's shot, that piece of it is a mob film.
Yep.
Yeah. The rest of the movie is a buddy comedy.
But then at the same time, the mob film is trying to be like a satire of a mob film. Like there's kind of like those like lines that the mobster and the cop are throwing at each other.
I have never thought this before. I've seen this movie, I don't even know how many times, and I never once picked up on the fact that they take pieces from like 15 other noir or mob films
absolutely
and like throw them in. my mind was literally.
But it wasn't fast enough. Like if the pace were just a little bit faster, I would have been like, oh, this is really good, kind of like back and forth, they're riffing off each other.
Well,
but it was just that bit too slow where I was like, are these jokes? Am I supposed to laugh?
That's when she was like confused about where the humor was.
What is this writing? Like,
I mean, it's not Hawks, but it's pretty close because like Diamond and Billy Wilder had like, this is the beginning of a long career. This is, I think, the second film they've done together, and they would go on to do The Apartment, Irma the Deuce, like tons and tons of stuff. So they like that whip crack kind of stuff was there, but the way that he paced this out, I think, is a deliberate, because if you watch something like 1, 2, 3, there's not a place to breathe in that movie.
No.
And that's like James Cagney, and he's just like, blah, 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 blah. And, that's the same team, this is the same kind of style. So the weird part for me about this is that he's sticking so hard into this, I'm making a send up of noir gangster movies that it does have this like weird pacing. And the studio itself actually had the same note you did, Helen. They were like, you need to shave 15 minutes off this fucking thing.
Oh my God. Just at the very beginning. Just at the very beginning. And it kind of set the tone for everything else. I mean, a little bit like when they got on the train, things picked up a little bit more, and then it picked up more in Florida. But that kind of whole beginning scene, I was like, oh my God, when
is Marilyn coming?
When is something going to happen?
I was just like, Helen was going to, because I had never seen it. So Helen told me.
Alex, this is hilarious. We're getting into this movie. And Alex is, I don't know, were you reading or were you like, when they came up on screen?
Yeah.
Alex was like, wait, Tony Curtis is in this? Wait a minute, Jack Lemmon's in this? Hold on, Marilyn Monroe's in this? That's like, wow, Alex.
Wow.
Wait a second. Not only that, but like we were watching it and Helen was like, it's a lot like Sister Act, except they dress up as women, I think. She's like, I can't remember.
No.
And then
they run from the mob,
I think. And then we're like watching it and I'm like, I don't see the mob like actually coming ever. When are they coming? And then eventually I'm like, oh, now they're here.
The what is it? The Society of Italian opera fans.
That was, I laughed at that. I gotta say, I laughed.
Oh God.
She also really liked the punchline at the end.
Well, we'll get there.
Oh yeah, like to understand, like he's like, this is an intentional kind of play. So like George Raff, who plays Spats, is known from Scarface back in the 30s. Like that was his big thing. This is honestly like probably the first big like non-B movie that he'd been in a while, I'm assuming. And all these other guys like Pat O'Brien, he's always been a heavy.
Those goons were great. I mean, those were classic goons.
All those guys like who was it, Georgie Stone, a lot of these guys were just staples out of like the 30s and the 40s, coming out of like these kind of like dirty genre kind of pieces. So putting them in this comedy is his way. It's just like, this is so meta. Because audiences are going to pick up on this when they see this. They're just like, why is this happening? The part when the guy that ends up jumping out of the cake is also the guy that's flipping the coin out in the front. That's Edward Gene Robinson's son. And Edward Gene Robinson is, the famous gangster from back in the day. He's flipping the coin, which was George Raff's bit in Scarface. He was the guy flipping the coin. And he adds that line where he's like, where'd you learn that? That's dumb, and that's such a direct, like, kind of inference. Like, all this stuff is so ridiculously satirical, and especially that big, like, the guy who's half deaf.
Oh my God, little Bonaparte.
Yeah, little Bonaparte.
He was like Little Caesar.
He was like, some people might say that, but I say,
like, all that stuff is just so well done. But yeah, it feels like his mind was just so hell-bent on this being a noir send-up that you kind of lose the thread of like the buddy comedy bits of it. Like, honestly, Spats doesn't come in for a good 40 some odd minutes after its introduction.
Yeah, totally.
And that I remember when I saw it for the very first time when I was like 7 or 8, and I do remember watching it for the first time, that I was furious at my parents for making me sit and watch it because they had promised me a musical.
Oh.
And then I had to sit through 40 minutes of gangster film.
I
didn't understand that was funny. I didn't know who any of those people were. I didn't get any of the humor.
Yeah.
And then the second that Marilyn Monroe showed up, I was like, oh, she's got a ukulele. She's pretty. She's a girl.
Yeah.
We're good.
That's the thing. There was like a lot of context I feel missing for those not getting that, like,
Right.
All that kind of,
like in modern times, you have to come in with a film school education in order to enjoy the first 40 minutes of the movie.
Pretty much.
And there's like little bits that I think are a little bit more accessible. Like Izzy Diamond put in that whole bit with like the steam when Marilyn enters is an obvious, like homage to 7 Year Itch, which was like her big.
That was some good physical comedy on her part too. I thought she was gonna like slip. Like it was really good. Her reaction.
Oh, back to the first part. The funniest bit of the first part is when they're casually packing up their instruments during the raid.
when they see the badge, they're like, "Oh, and we're done."
They're like,
I was a big fan of a lot of this, but yeah, I could see where it's like you're building this up, and then it goes, into left field for a good while, and then it kind of steers its way back, and it does kind of come to a wonderful head, and that's kind of where I left it, where it's just like, yeah, I could see getting kind of lost in the weeds on this, but you don't want to cut away from any of the stuff on the train.
It was almost like, at the time, people would kind of saunter into the movie theater at like staggered intervals.
Oh,
and
sure.
So they were like, the first 40 minutes, we're just going to make it kind of like filler. And then by the time people are all sitting down.
I would identify it as that it's a fake open and then a second open. That first scene at the speakeasy has nothing to do with the rest of the movie except for introducing Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the mobsters that we see in the next scene. So if they had just pulled that piece out, started it with Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis running away and into the garage, then I think it actually would have kept the pace a little more steady.
Right. Because you do establish that, hey, Spatz is a murderer in that second scene in the garage. So you don't really need the opening setup with the busting.
Although them drinking their buttermilk and the guy shouting for more coffee, which I 100% didn't get as like an 8-year-old kid.
Yeah.
It's clever and cute. And it totally, as an adult, you're like, oh, I get why this is in here. But it isn't necessary.
No.
It does set up why Spatz is so mad at them, though.
Right. It does feel like they're trying to create that bridge, because if they were just like, oh, they were just witness to a murder, why would he really care about that much? But then, having a little bit more connection, and then seeing, the police officer is the same guy that was in the bust, and like, you have all these kind of things playing back. And Wilder always wanted to do a slapstick comedy. But I think this is pretty close to, and a lot of the comedies he did at this time period kind of got close to that. The farcicalness and like how ridiculous it goes. Like I actually really love the bits when they're trying to find work and they're not even trying. Like anything, no. It's like it's playing into that whole this is the Depression kind of era. All those jokes about investing in the stock market.
Yeah, the stock market is booming because it's the 1920s, right before the crash.
Also, you get Tony Curtis doing his best Cary Grant.
Oh my God, the Cary Grant was great. But also Tony Curtis was beautiful.
Yes, he was. Wait, this is an excellent place to talk about this. I developed a fetish for men with glasses from this movie.
Oh, for real? Hilarious.
From Marilyn Monroe's line about, I always liked a man with glasses. He's so sensitive. That line stuck with me at 7 years old, and it has
I assumed that was put in by Arthur Miller. I was like, that bastard.
But Helen was just like, every time he came up and he was in the
Is he pouting? Is he pouting, or his lips just that full? Like
luscious.
He was a gorgeous man.
He was a very pretty man.
So pretty.
I have a lovely anecdote from that. So you had mentioned the sheer will that those dresses had to stick onto Marilyn Monroe. Those are done by the amazing Ori Kelly. Burt Hendrickson was credited for the wardrobe, but Ori Kelly specifically did all the gowns for Marilyn. And Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon said, if we're going to do this, we want the same treatment. So he did all three of them.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
He was the most prolific Australian Oscar winner until he was dethroned by fellow Australian Catherine Martin, who did Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge. The fun part about this is that when they had talked about this, Curtis is in an interview, and Lemmon had mentioned this as well, that they wanted to make sure that, this wasn't off the rack kind of stuff. They didn't want to look ridiculous, more than they already did. But they wanted to be as convincing as they possibly could.
They were
even
good
though
outfits.
Yeah.
The coats especially. Those coats were beautiful. I was like, I need Tony Curtis's coat.
with that nice fur line.
They could have used a little padding though.
Well, especially with Jack Lemmon's shoulders.
It was
Jesus.
the 20s. This is the thing.
I mean,
like,
but as a drag aficionado, they could have used a little pad.
Sure. Yeah. No, you're
But
right.
I mean, it was the 20s. No one would have had the the straight up and down.
It was the look. Yes,
the
that's
look.
pretty true.
I mean, Marilyn's outfits were very non-20s,
Except
like
Marilyn.
that kind of like clinging,
You don't put Marilyn Monroe in a column dress.
Oh god.
You don't want to drop
there
waist.
was a hint at it. There was a little bit of fringe every once in a while, and you'd be like, "Oh, here we go," kind of 20s.
But even if you did, it just wouldn't work.
No, it doesn't work on that. But Ori Kelly was doing measurements for all of them. They had, trailers all right next to each other. So they would come around. He would take measurements from everybody. And he would go out. And the way that Ori tells the story is that they'd finished up with the two men and then came into Marilyn's. And she's wearing, her normal like blouse and everything. And he stands up, measures her out, and goes, Curtis has a better ass than you. And she just unbuttons her blouse, flops them out, and says, he doesn't have tits like this.
Damn
Good for her.
So few people do.
And they had they had a lot of fun. Curtis is notorious for being kind of cantankerous dick, especially to Marilyn Monroe.
Yep.
But a lot of the stuff, especially with this film in the background, kind of takes away from what they ended up creating. And Billy Wilder is a strange little Austrian man who likes to make weird movies and have fun doing it. And it seems like that was basically what happened here. But I just wanted to mention Ori Kelly because those dresses are pretty amazing.
They're incredible.
They're great.
Yeah.
Can I also just add, I kind of felt bad for Jack Lemmon because he was so unattractive as a woman.
Ouch.
He was handsome.
He was handsome as a guy.
His wig was really bad.
His wig was really bad.
Both
But
their wigs
also
are
he was
pretty
doing
bad.
a lot of like clown face. He was doing a lot of like extreme facial reactions. But just like you got Tony Curtis on one side and you got Marilyn Monroe on the other. And you got poor Jack Lemmon in the middle having to like clown it up. I just felt a little.
Well, that was a lot of his, like Lemon had always said, like he really jumped into it because he wanted to work with Wilder, and then they continued to work together for a long time. And he really just kind of fell in love with it. And Curtis had said, well, if you're going to do that, I can't mimic that. So I have to like really bring it inside, which I think works in that aspect.
He was great. His whole kind of like,
yeah.
Like the most he was imitating a woman was just being like,
Exactly.
Boy was really good.
No.
I read that they actually had a female impersonator, like a famous European female impersonator named Barbette, who coached them on.
They did have a lot of
gender identity.
So in order to, kind of get these mannerisms down, they started a lot of this, but after a while they just kind of gave it up. But it does kind of pay off because the way that, especially towards the end when you see them running in full heels.
Yeah. Running in heels.
What I really liked about both their characters and the way all the characters, no one suspects and no one makes fun of them for being ugly women, and everybody in this film buys into their reality as women. They like are hitting on them. They're treating them as like classy, fragile dames. Even Lemon in his bathing suit, like there's no questions asked. It's just all accepted.
Well, and I kind of love that they're having them as women. They make it kind of subversive in that all of these typical things we would see women getting assaulted with, like in the elevator when he's getting his butt pinched, he's able to fight back as a woman, but he's still fighting back in a way that women definitely in the 60s weren't doing.
Yeah.
So I feel like it was actually kind of forward thinking in that way, even as some of the comments about like a man marrying a man may not have been super forward thinking.
Yeah.
Right. There's a lot of that. I mean, I don't want to go completely into like 90s queer theory and bring this kind of thing, but like the playing with gender roles is something that was not flying. I mean, at the time, this is 59, PCA, the Production Code of Administration, didn't back this thing. There was so many like church leagues that were up in arms, and like one of it just called it pure smut. you have a Monsignor from some like coven just coming in and lambasting your film that is obviously making bank.
Yeah.
So
but also wasn't it wasn't showing what they were doing as an evil.
No.
It was a necessity, and it was fun, and it was treated very lightly. So I understand why the Pope would go after it.
Well, I don't think it was like the Pope, but
it's supposed to be evil. If you're going to play that, they have to be punished.
I don't think it was the Pope, but definitely a lot of people in the church were just livid about this, because you have people that are treating it like you said, Rice, is like, this is just what you do. And the fact that everybody is so nice, that's the thing that really gets me. There's never that moment of betrayal. How did you lie to me kind of.
You mean Osgood fielding the ally we all wish we could be?
Yes.
Yeah. But like also Marilyn, I was hoping that she'd at least be a little irked, because he totally lied to her
on many levels
just to get in her pants, and ended up being the kind of guy she said she didn't want. And she ends up with anyways. And I was just like, oh, Marilyn, I wish you just got your dream man that you wanted.
Or I wish that you just didn't end up with a man and you were happy by yourself.
You guys are looking at this from the 2020.
Right.
That's the thing, is I was looking at it 2020 eyes as opposed to
like here to talk about this.
And I would also say that I don't think it would have been true to her character if she had gotten angry or had ended up by herself. Like, her character just wants to be in love, and this is the first nice guy. So even if he lied to her, he's still nice about it.
Well, but it's also not her story. Like, it's as
not,
much as she's the star of this, it's not her story. She has no character arc. She's not actually, pretty much no one has a character arc. Like, no one does.
Well, Tony Crowe's like that much.
Yeah, like,
he goes from being a total womanizer.
He respects one woman.
Just womanizes Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah. But it's not her story anyway, so I don't expect like a lot of character development from her.
Right. And there's a minor growth of, the whole giving the bracelet and trying to give her closure, as opposed to the story that she tells, which is like, all I'm left is with empty toothpaste tubes and the fuzzy end of the lollipop. So in this case, she gets a little bit of sweet, and that's.
Well, and he does. I mean, the character growth for him is when he says to her, "No guy is worth it."
Yeah.
Because up to that point, you've been told very clearly that he thought he was the guy that was worth it.
Right.
So there is a little bit of growth there. Not much.
Not much. But this, and I mean, Wilder and Curtis have said this too. It's like, this is a farce. It's not meant to be.
It's not a morality tale.
Yeah. It's you're supposed to just giggle your brains out while you're sitting in a movie theater watching it. And to that effect, it's pretty effective still for me. I don't know.
Yeah.
It does bring us to the absolute famous last line. Nobody's perfect. And the best part about that is that Diamond and Wilder had just kind of written that late at night, and that was like, they're like, we got to finish this up. Yeah, sure, here. And they knew the punchline was, he's going to tell this guy he's a man, and then they got like, what's the topper to that? And they just got burnt out, and they said, you know what, we don't need it, because that's going to be the joke. And they said, we'll come up with something funnier tomorrow. And then they shot it. It's one of the last things they shot, I believe, for this film. And so they shot it, and they were like, no, that works. That's great. Just like,
well, and I would say it's mostly the way that Joey Brown delivers. All about that delivery, and it's just so pure and innocent. And
he's just a sweet guy.
And they actually had a really nice night. Like, I think the tango scene was my favorite scene, when they're like having fun dancing at the nightclub and like tango until dawn. I was like, that, and Jack Lemmon looks like he's having a real good time with the maracas.
Well, and Jack Lemmon coming back to it and like clearly having had a great time and felt special
and was like,
and been enamored with at least the feeling of being special.
I was like, I got proposed to, and he was very happy about it. And I love that Osgood he just really wants to be married.
He just wants to be married.
Yeah.
However many times.
Yeah.
He wants to have that. He wants to share these like little moments in life. And it was like, oh, that's disgustingly sweet. I love it. And my favorite part about this too is like, so he didn't know how to dance for this. So they actually had to like teach him several hours worth of studio time to actually teach him how to tango.
Who didn't? Jack Lemmon?
No. Osgood, yeah.
Bless his heart.
So they spent hours learning to dance for those weird like cutaway scenes.
So good.
He went from a creepy guy who was pinching ladies' butts to
like the man of everyone's dream. Well, honestly, through my 2020s eyes, that crosscut between their date and Marilyn Monroe, Tony Curtis's date, anybody would have rather been on Jack Lemmon's date.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody likes cold pheasant? Come on.
You mean no one likes being deceived so that you are...
I mean, it was a pretty good ploy, though.
I mean, but
it was really coercive.
That was the whole episode of like Friends where that guy tells Monica that he hadn't had sex in a year or two since his, and I was like,
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that whoever wrote that may have seen something like it.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Like, I always thought that was kind of the funny part, that he obviously, Tony Curtis in this is playing
he's negging. He's 100%
he's not even just negging, but he's not that bright.
Yeah, I mean, like,
no.
In this.
Right. Yeah.
And this is his solution that he came up with was, oh, I get it. I can't get it up. You got to help me.
I mean, it works.
I mean, it worked, but it was just like, it to me, it feels like, you know, and I've seen modern interpretations of this, but that to me was just, he didn't know how to react because he obviously doesn't know what he's doing when he gets on that boat.
Yeah, he is kind of like on the fly, right? He's kind of making it up as he goes.
He's like, where is the dinner? Where did they set up the dinner for me? I wonder where.
Let's drive this boat backwards because
I don't know how to drive a boat. So I never thought about this. I've never driven a boat. Oh, weird.
And that's, to me, I always love that bit because it's just like he's so over his head that this is the bullshit he comes up with. So it's never like a scheme. Like, yes, it's gross that he is deceiving this woman, but it is out of this like childish cowardice that he is just like, I don't know what I'm doing. This. And he feels like a toddler when he's just like lying his way through the entirety of that bit.
Yeah. I mean, he does definitely seem surprised by his own burgeoning feelings for her, you know? Like he does seem to be kind of shocked that he feels like he needs to give her a goodbye at the end. And then when he sees her singing, that's definitely that, 2% growth that we see.
Yeah, it's very minor, but I mean, just starting off when he's just like, I collect these shells. He's such a child. And that's like the way that he kind of approaches this like.
Well, can we talk about the worst decision he makes in the entire movie? Which is telling Jack Lemmon to run 5 seconds after mobsters have killed an entire room of mobsters. And he's like, you know what we should do? Not stay hidden where people won't find us. We should definitely get up and run right now. And then run. Worst decision in the entire movie.
I don't know. I think betting your overcoats on a racehorse is pretty bad.
And I like how his gambling problem went nowhere.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to speak to his impulsivity. That's my guess.
It kind of fits in that. And also the fact that apparently Jack Lemmon will just go along with anything that he says.
Yep.
And you remember the Looney Tunes, like the big dog and the small dog, and like,
Wasn't it Jack Lemmon's idea at first to dress up as women and join this band?
Yes.
And then at the end, he's like, I can't believe you convinced me to do this. It's like, it was your idea, dude.
And he says that. He says it's your idea. And he's like, well, I didn't want to go through with it.
But also it was just like Jack Lemmon that was totally interested in Marilyn and then
gets it snatched out from under him.
Yeah.
You're cock blocked majorly.
Although
by like all the other girls in the girl band.
The train birth scene though, I still
that was great.
I still love when everybody's like, where are you getting, like, why is there sausage and cheese now?
Because that's what I don't know if you know this, Randall. That's what women carry around all the time.
The truest line ever, where she's like, I brought cheese and crackers in case anybody gets hungry. It's like,
Yeah, have you never been on a trip with me? Dude, also you carry cheese in your pocket all the time. How dare you?
I always have snacks.
I'm the only one that doesn't have food on my person at all times.
Snacks are light.
I try to carry food as much as I can, but it's never for me. It's usually to feed strange animals.
Okay, Snow White.
It's true.
I need to always have snacks.
Well, yes, I love snacks, but like when I'm out, there was a couple days ago and I was like, oh, there's a little black squirrel that's running around the corner and I want to give them something. And I didn't have anything in my pocket and I regret that ever since.
Forever. Well, you should be careful though.
So I either want to leave the house with nothing or I need to leave the house like I'm hiking the Appalachian Mountains for like 16 days. And there is no in between anymore. I don't know how to leave the house and what you need to bring. So when I'm in my Appalachia phase for leaving the house, I have to have like 16 snacks and a water bottle. And yes, I'm just going to the grocery store, but
what if?
I need it.
What if?
You should also be careful with the squirrels now, apparently.
Yeah, aren't they getting vicious?
Squirrels, apparently, I forget what park it was, but they were just like attacking people in the park.
What the F are you doing?
I think they were. The squirrels have been wanting food, and people haven't been feeding them.
Yeah.
I think.
It's not, even if the squirrels want food, you kind of have to do like the cat little.
No, I've been attacked by squirrels.
Come over.
I pet a
Because
squirrel.
they know you. They know you carry food, Randall.
This conversation is taking a weird turn, guys.
Alex has been trying to befriend some crows. There's some crows in the neighborhood. And Alex is like, I want them to recognize me
crows
so
love
that
cheese.
they know
We
that
had
I'm a good person.
50 crows following that. It's unnerving.
It's really unsettling. Okay, we're
back.
We're back. I did want to talk about alternate casting. So at this time, when you're making a movie, you need to have a big star. And Billy Wilder had his eye on Tony Curtis for a long time. Unfortunately, Curtis alone isn't going to be, enough for a studio to sign off on this, especially because, it's a little bit strange. So Mitzi Gaynor was their original idea. She was in South Pacific. That was like big kind of role she had. She was also actually with Monroe in There's No Business Like Show Business. So they had her in mind when they were going to cast Sugar, which left the role for Jerry Daphne. And so they were going around with people like Bob Hope.
I could see that.
I could see it.
Danny Kaye.
I love.
Oh, he would.
He would have given Tony Curtis a run for his money.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally.
absolutely.
And he
Jerry
would have
Lewis.
No.
But here's the one that gets me. This is what Wilder wanted. Wilder wanted Frank Sinatra.
I cannot imagine Frank Sinatra in a dress.
Never in a million years would Frank
Not
Sinatra.
in a million.
Right?
I understand why though, because that would have tied the mob movie section of it together.
Absolutely.
Totally.
But I cannot in a million years see Frank Sinatra wearing a dress.
No.
I mean,
he would have never.
Yeah, as goofy as he gets was Guys and Dolls.
Yeah, he would have never done it, and that's kind of thing because I could see Danny Kaye definitely
would have been great.
Oh, I love
out of
him.
the water. So Lemon had kind of come into them. They're like, well, we can't really float this with Tony Curtis, Mitzi Gaynor, and Jack Lemmon. The studio was like, Jack Lemmon's not big enough. But once Marilyn signed on, they're like, we don't give a shit.
Who cares?
We got Marilyn Monroe. And that basically greenlit everything after that. But I just it was so funny that he really wanted Frank Sinatra, but they just never clicked. And, they're both cantankerous people. So I imagine there's different stories that are kind of floated around. One said he stood him up on a lunch. The other one was Sinatra was just didn't want to deal with a lot of this shit. And who knows what actually happened, but I just, for the life of me, could not see Sinatra in a dress. And especially the way that Lemon goes for it.
Or running away from mobsters.
Right. It is so antithetical to the image that
I could maybe have seen him in the Tony Curtis role, where he was a little bit more macho, but the Jack Lemmon role, the whole point of the Jack Lemmon role is that he kind of at one point loses himself in the woman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that would never be the case with Sinatra.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's ever a point with Tony Curtis where you see him being the woman.
No, he never really loses anything because he's also playing multiple other people.
Right. And he's I remember Cary Grant from this movie,
right.
not Josephine.
Who apparently, Billy Wilder always wanted to work with, never got a chance to. Did show him this movie, and they kind of jokingly said, I didn't talk like that. But also other notables, the band is actually filled with lots and lots of people. Huge television credits and a lot of film credits, but one of my favorites is Grace Lee Whitney, who's Janice Rand from the original series of Star Trek and also appears in several of the movies. She was the fiddle player, and Laurie Mitchell, who is Queen Yelena of Venus from Queens of Outer Space, starring Jar Jar Gabor, which is also another one of my horrible favorites because it's very, very bad. But the first testing of this was at the Bay Theater down in southern Los Angeles. It went horribly.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no one liked it. People walked out very vocal about this. Well, they had set up, because the way that screenings go is you say you're going into a movie and they go, oh, surprise, we're showing you this. They had not queued it up for a comedy.
Oops.
So it went
and then
back.
they have 40 minutes of a mobster movie, and then they're like, what the fuck?
Right. But in the audience was one Steve Allen.
Wow.
who thoroughly enjoyed it, and to the day he died, wrote about it as saying, I was the only person out of 1,200 in that who actually saw the future and said, yeah, this is going to be great. You all are losers. The studio panicked and told him to cut like 15 minutes out of the movie just to get it short so they can run it. And Wilder said bye. I think he cut like maybe one scene out of it, still at 2 hours. And then they did a screening at Westwood, which is right by UCLA, and the crowd absolutely loved it. You know, younger crowd getting a little bit more into this, actually marketing it as a comedy. And from there on, yeah, it was just a smash success. Yeah, it's weird to think that, I don't know how an audience would manage to, especially at this time, because at 59, you're not really watching something like this.
That's what I think was so great about it in 59, is that now we're so used to this kind of comedy with the guy dressing up in drag for the laugh, but then they never did that. But it must have been shocking.
Yeah, like they did a few of those gags where isn't it funny the men are dressed like women? Mm-hmm. But it was always in relation to their dealing with the world around it. And I think that's the difference between something like this and then other movies where they feature performers in drag.
And that's what I think is so interesting about it, is in 59, they didn't treat it like it was an aberration. It was just part of the joke. But then the second you get into like the 80s, who had a string of these kind of movies, it was always treated as like a joke, or, this guy is such an ugly woman, or this girl, is going to get her boob felt up before the end of the movie because she's dressed like a guy. Like there's always had to be some sort of
even into the 90s
element to it. Into the 90s. Yeah. So I think it was interesting that in a time that was a lot less accepting, it was much more acceptable in the movie to dress like a woman than it was in the 80s.
Well, I was waiting I forgot about the bathing scene. So I was waiting for that moment where Jack Lemmon has to like make an excuse, and it's ridiculous. No, they had him put on a bathing suit and run around the beach in the ocean. And again, it was just uncommented on, and it was totally fine. And he was wearing.
Where's the one comment where she tells him that he's so flat chested, everything just hangs better on him?
Yeah.
But that was the desirable body type in the 20s anyway. Like everybody wanted to be flat chested for those pillar dresses.
Yeah, I did notice that his bathing suit was a little longer in the shorts than the other women. Like, let's not show too much of Jack Lemmon's very nice legs. Like,
they both have nice legs.
Yeah.
Really
legs and Jack Lemmon's arms. Seriously.
Yeah.
But like a football player.
He was a fit guy. I mean, both of them, Curtis and Lemmon, really good looking dudes. And it kind of weirds me out. Like at least like Jack Lemmon kind of grew into the old man, literally being in Grumpy Old Men. Curtis.
Mm-hmm. No, old Tony Curtis is upsetting.
Yeah. Like,
I said that to Helen. I was like, wow, Jack Lemmon actually looks a lot more attractive as an older guy than
old Tony Curtis was like. Tony Curtis decided he wanted to be an old gay man when he was about 70 years old.
Yeah.
And he didn't sleep with men, but everything else about him was old gay man.
Yeah, I'm looking at
it's not okay.
I don't like it.
I don't like it.
It's not okay. He turned a corner at some point and you're like, Tony Curtis, what happened to you?
Well, it looks like he got work done.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's definitely
and he used to wear a scarf everywhere, and it was just very weird.
The one thing that I remember watching this is so there was a made for television movie. It was a remake of Tarzan Goes to New York, and Tony Curtis is in it.
Tarzan Goes to New York. Wow.
Yeah, it is god awful. I don't remember anybody else in that movie, but I just remember Tony Curtis is there, and I was like, did you have to do this to keep your SAG like card active? Like, what is this? Because he obviously is drunk, does not care about anything in context of this. He's playing some New York detective, and it's just the weirdest thing. And you're just like, oh, old Tony Curtis is sad.
Yeah, no. Old Jack Lemmon was great.
Yeah.
We should remember young Tony Curtis.
Yes.
It's kind of like Marlon Brando. Like, we need to battle royale old Marlon Brando and old Tony Curtis.
I always have that feeling with Mickey Rourke too. It's just like,
I thought you were about to say Mickey Rooney.
No, even young Mickey Rooney is no.
God,
Mickey Rourke is
young Mickey Rooney. He was in a version of what's that Shakespeare play with Puck? Yeah, I wanted to murder him. His version of Puck is the worst version of Puck I have ever witnessed in my life.
As a lifelong Judy fan, I have had to watch so many Mickey Rooney things.
Don't get the Mickey Rooney thing.
I've never got it.
It was
I get that he's
else.
cute.
He was small, right? He was petite.
He was just little.
He's a round-faced little imp.
Everybody else in that movie was wonderful. Olivia de Havilland, a joy.
Anyway, well, actually, this does actually bring up a point of the reason why they ended up getting this past a lot of the suits, because they were watching this in the dailies going, what the fuck are you making? They kept referencing, like, Is Diamond kept saying, like, no, it's Shakespearean. It's Shakespearean, trust me. Because he would reference, like, it's classic in the sense of a Shakespearean comedy, because you would have people taking different roles. You'd have men playing women.
Sure. And there is the guy playing a girl playing a guy.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how they kind of convinced them, even though they knew that's not what they were making.
But on the other hand, not wrong.
No, but he's just saying, hey, and this is where the benefits of a humanities education comes in, is you can bullshit your way to.
Yep.
It's very everybody gets married in the end through no logic.
True. Yeah,
whatsoever.
It's very 12th Night.
Marriages, totally. It is Shakespearean. He wasn't wrong. Billy Wilder wasn't lying.
Yeah.
They didn't marry yet.
Well,
it's an
one of them's engaged.
They're eloping.
Hell, they're talking about adopting kids. I'd say that's like well down the path of like marriage.
I just love that he kept being like, no,
you can't knock this down. My love is strong.
We have a connection. And I really appreciated about Osgood. He was like, it doesn't matter. It's just like love is love with him.
That's right.
And he really loved
him. He
him.
saw it and he was like, this is what's happening. I will do what needs to be done.
And honestly, in my head, Jack Lemmon is, now that the truth is out, is kind of like going to go with it and be like, you know what?
He had a really good time that night, guys.
Really good time.
Dancing home.
He was taken care of too.
Security is important.
Do you remember how fondly he looked at those maracas when he was packing them up?
Yes. And also he packed them up like he took them. That was a conscious decision.
It was a memento.
I think he found his true self when
I think
decided to play with his gender identity a little bit.
It's very sweet. And I kind of like that it is not in the traditional romantic. I mean, they still label this as like a dark comedy because of, the murder and, gangster kind of things. The literal St. Valentine's Day massacre that happens at the beginning of the movie.
Oh, that murder. Also, the massacre of all the gangsters at the end.
Oh yeah. They all kind of die there too. That one's just funny for me. I don't know why.
Well, I like how the entire plot of the movie is like buttoned up through nothing that our main characters are doing.
Nope.
Yeah.
They really
because it's two different movies. It's two different movies. It's switched together into one.
It's two different movies, and they are not the stars of the gangster movie.
Oh God!
And they have
it
nothing
is Sister Act 2.
Yes, it's Sister Act 1.
Sister Act.
No. But like, Sister Act 2 was two different movies they shoved together.
Yeah.
Because it was like,
All right, so if they remake this, Whoopi Goldberg.
Yes.
Wait, does she have to play a man?
She could play Sweet Sue.
Oh, she could play Sweet Sue. That's
cool. Yeah. That's true.
Or the mobster.
Ooh, that would be a good one.
Oh, twist.
Yeah, she plays Spats and she's hunting down. That would even play into the fact that she has to take over Harvey Keitel's role where she's hunting down. Oh, I love it.
Oh, wow.
There you go.
Twist.
So they have tried to make musicals of this, but they have never actually tried a full reboot.
Isn't there a Chinese movie that remakes this, or is that it just happens to be the
I don't know
same?
if it's a direct remake, but this is also technically stealing from a German film, which is borrowing from a French film. So sometime in the, I want to say, late 40s, early 50s, there is a German film where two musicians dress up as women, and one of the musicians falls in love with the all-girl group that they're traveling with. It's more of a traditional, like, oh, it's funny because he has to keep, Luten Machten heißt gern.
If we're going to translate some like it hot into German, there you go. Also, never say that again.
What? No, my German's great.
Luten Machten heißt gern.
Well, that's the German version of something like hot. But that actually, though, there is
Oh, no, that's not the German version. That's just a bad
It's a bad translation of it. But there is, in 1951, there was a German film called Fanfaren der Lieben.
Of course.
You can kill me for that later, Bryce, in my pronunciation, which is based off of 35.
Something of the life.
Fanfaren.
Is it
the
life or
fanfare
love?
of life?
Love.
The love of life? The
Leben is like life.
Ach mein
Leben
Leben
is love.
Was 1951, about two male musicians who disguise themselves as women. That is actually also based on a 1935 French film called The Fanfares of Love. So, yeah, it's a story within a story with a story, but they just said, oh, let's just use this setting, and I also want to massacre a bunch of people and make a noir parody.
It's a hard right turn from mob massacre to all girl band on a train.
Yeah.
It does, because otherwise what gets them on the train? Just money. Then they seem
that
greedier.
was Izzy Diamond's whole point when he was writing with Wilder, was like, because originally they wanted it to be modern. They wanted it to be set in the 50s and maybe even the 60s. But they're like, what would make them actually have to do this? And you have to put them in a Depression era setting under literal threat of death to not make it just like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that.
Or they're greedy slime balls. Like if they were just doing it for money.
Yeah, you do need like a really strong impetus.
Yeah. And honestly, witnessing a massacre is probably going to get you there.
Yeah. And having to run for your life.
Yeah. Also, I do love that even though they are running for their life, they seem to be having a really good time.
They're living it up. Yeah.
I mean, they're in Florida, right?
Yeah.
Supposedly Florida, but it was shot in Southern California. Like everything was.
Yeah.
You know?
Southern California was like the Toronto of the 50s.
Also, the day for night shooting on this, stellar. I love that bright ass moon that just casts those like really harsh shadows on the trees.
Yeah, that was funny. I noticed that on one of the pier shots, like he was coming to pick her up like in the middle of the night or something. And it's like, that is very clearly daylight.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are some of the first things that they shot, which at that point shooting was going great. It was only until they got into studio that everything started to go haywire, and it was like 3 weeks over. It was originally supposed to be a 50-day shoot that turned into over 70.
Oh, wow.
And ended up costing the studio about like $2 million.
Yeah, they made their money back.
Oh, they made their money back in spades. But at the time, this was also like Wilder was part of I can't remember the production guy, the guy who produced this, but they were just new to their deal with Universal. So they were like with UA. Yeah. And they were like, hey, we're going to get this done. And they're like, are you kidding me? You need to finish this up now. Like, it's like, you remember when you told me you could get this done for X amount of money and now you're telling me no? Yeah, that's not a good look, but they made it up, so it's fine. Overall, I only had one other kind of note, which was like, I'm a huge fan of Billy Wilder. Working at Film Forum for so many years, I've got to see tons and tons of stuff. And this one, he had always said, like I said in the beginning, he never really viewed this as like the greatest comedy of all. He just thought it was good. Which is kind of the attitude that he took on this. And I think because of his shooting style and the way that he kind of edits while he's shooting made this a little bit stodgy, but he ended up perfecting this stuff when you get to like The Apartment or some of the later collaborations that he would do. Like 1, 2, 3 is one of my absolute favorite Billy Wilder films. And you can see the burgeoning of his new comedic voice that was kind of coming out of this, because before this he was kind of known as like the drama guy, you know, like this was kind of moving into a new phase of his career, and this is definitely like the start, and I always kind of really appreciate this film for that. I mean, what else to say than Ori Kelly? Holy shit, those dresses.
Even though they were very similar dresses, like one was white, one was black, but otherwise they were
right. But I mean,
sparkles basically, taped onto her skin. Right. They were stunning.
I mean, you want to talk about just the guy to go to. This was the guy who was, He was also a notorious alcoholic and ended up dying of liver cancer at a fairly young age.
That took a turn.
He's Australian. He lives a hard life. Yeah, I don't think this would have had the staying power if it wasn't for the kitsch, the look, and especially Marilyn Monroe.
Agreed.
And while I still really enjoy this film, I think it still does hold up, but it definitely has like a more a naivete about it. But yeah, it's like for 70 years out, I still would say like this is definitely worth checking out, and it's not going to be for everybody because it's definitely got some weird pacing issues. But I think that's for cultural and historic kind of reasons, it's definitely worth checking out.
I think if you have a tolerance for old films, which I know a lot of people today don't.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think someone who only watches movies made after 1990 is going to enjoy this. Just won't happen.
I'm sure there's I think I have a pretty high tolerance for old films, and this kind of was slow for me. But yeah. I found things to like enjoy in it. Like I said, that tango scene where Jack Lemmon was actually like really enjoying himself and like being the lady. Yeah, he was. It was great. It was fun. And that kicker line was great. That kind of like last scene was great. And probably if it had been sped up at the beginning, I wouldn't have already been in a. Okay, let's go.
Taste in your mouth at the beginning.
For me, this is kind of like Labyrinth, where I expected to be aghast by certain things, and I'm like, no, this is actually a really wholesome rewatching. And the things that I kind of assumed that would be there because I haven't seen this in a few years, they weren't. And I was just assuming a lot of things about the time and about the culture. And it was pretty wholesome. I still say it holds up.
Well, I will say, doing the history research for the 50s, this decade sucks.
Oh yeah, the decade sucks.
No, and I really do. Like I said, I'm a huge Wilder fan. It to me, I really do like that. Even now, I can sit down and watch it, and I giggle like I did when I was young at stupid things like driving the boat backwards because you don't know how to put it in forward, which is something that is like as a gag, it's pretty lame, but
broad.
It just works,
Yeah, it works. It was funny.
There's some things that don't land nearly as much as I remember them, but like there's stuff that I still laughed out loud and I really, really enjoy.
And the last line, the nobody's perfect, I can still, even watching it today, can hear a 1950s crowd dying over that laugh. Yeah. I can hear the audience start to laugh.
Yeah.
I'd still say, you are.
And it's a great lesson to live by. Nobody is perfect.
Nobody is perfect.
But you should all learn to tango.
You should accept people based on that.
But don't trip women at the beach just to hit on them.
Don't trip women at the beach just to hit on them. Don't pinch ladies' butts in the elevator.
Women have it worse than you realize. They get hit on all the time, and it's really frustrating.
I did appreciate
that was the thing that
realization that being a woman sucks in 1959. I'm sorry, 1920s. Yeah.
It's like, oh wow, they're really going for it with this. Like, oh god, it sucks to be a woman.
Really appreciated that. I was like, oh, thanks, fellas.
I do love that accent she puts on. It's like this weird mix of like kind of Jersey, kind of New York. I don't know what it is, but
supposed to be from Wisconsin,
Ohio.
Ohio.
Yeah, she's supposed to be like some
Sandusky
Polish immigrant.
Do they just pick the funniest like place names?
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure.
Exactly what happened. Yeah. Sheboygan was definitely picked for its comedic value.
Yeah, when you have mozzarella as your Italian name, I'm pretty sure you're not.
I literally was in shock at the fact that they named this guy Mr. Mozzarella.
Mr. Mozzarella's Funeral Home.
Oh god. That was
but
Billy Wilder's
I did not like Marilyn Monroe constantly calling herself dumb.
Yeah.
You're not dumb, Marilyn.
No.
Giving a bad dick.
Yeah, the fuzzy ends of the lollipop.
You're 25. Everybody's dumb. You're 24.
Yeah,
you're
she's
not even 25 yet. Of
yet.
course you're dumb.
Yeah.
Bless her
It
heart.
is, like you said, Dana, it is. There's always the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
The end of the lollipop.
Yeah.
I can tell you one thing, it's not going to happen to me again, ever. I'm tired of getting the fuzzy end of the lollipop.
I'm through with love, I'll never fall again. Said adieu to love, don't ever call again. For I must have you on no one. And so I'm through with love.